Captain America is an American fictional character, a superhero that appears in comic books published by Marvel Comics, as well as a number of television shows and movies. He was an American soldier in World War II who was given a serum that transformed him into a physically perfect human. He wears a patriotic costume, wields an indestructible circular shield, and fights for American ideals of liberty and justice. The character first appeared in Captain America Comics #1 from Marvel Comics' 1940s predecessor, Timely Comics, and was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Publication history. Golden Age. In 1940, writer Joe Simon conceived the idea for Captain America and made a sketch of the character in costume. "I wrote the name Super American at the bottom of the page," Simon said in his autobiography, and then I considered that. No, it didn't work. There were too many supers around. Captain America had a good sound to it. There weren't a lot of captains in comics. It was as easy as that. The boy companion was simply named Bucky, after my friend Bucky Pearson, a star on our high school basketball team. Simon recalled in his autobiography that Timely Comics publisher Martin Goodman gave him the go-ahead and directed that a Captain America solo comic book series be published as soon as possible. Needing to fill a full comic with primarily one-character stories, Simon did not believe that his regular creative partner, artist Jack Kirby, could handle the workload alone. "I didn't have a lot of objections to putting a crew on the first issue. There were two young artists from Connecticut that had made a strong impression on me. Al Avison and Al Gabriel often worked together and were quite successful in adapting their individual styles to each other. Actually, their work was not too far from that of Kirby's. If they worked on it, and if one inker tied the three styles together, I believed the final product would emerge as quite uniform." The two Als were eager to join in on the new Captain America book, but Jack Kirby was visibly upset. "You're still #1, Jack," I assured him. "It's just a matter of a quick deadline for the first issue." "I'll make the deadline," Jack promised. "I'll pencil it all myself and make the deadline." I hadn't expected this kind of reaction. But I acceded to Kirby's wishes and, it turned out, was lucky that I did. There might have been two Als, but there was only one Jack Kirby. I wrote the first Captain America book with penciled lettering right on the drawing boards, with very rough sketches for figures and backgrounds. Kirby did his thing, building the muscular anatomy, adding ideas and pepping up the action as only he could. Then he tightened up the penciled drawings, adding detailed backgrounds, faces and figures. Al Liederman would ink that first issue, which was lettered by Simon and Kirby's regular letterer, Howard Ferguson. Simon said Captain America was a consciously political creation. He and Kirby were morally repulsed by the actions of Nazi Germany in the years leading up to the United States' involvement in World War II and felt war was inevitable. The opponents to the war were all quite well organized. "We wanted to have our say too." Captain America Comics #1, a Euro cover dated March 1941 and on sale December 20, 1940, a year before the attack on Pearl Harbor. But a full year into World War II, a Euro showed the protagonist punching Nazi leader Adolf Hitler in the jaw. It sold nearly 1 million copies. While most readers responded favorably to the comic, some took objection. Simon noted, "When the first issue came out we got a lot of threatening letters and hate mail. Some people really opposed what CAP stood for. The threats, which included menacing groups of people loitering out on the street outside of the offices, proved so serious that police protection was posted with New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia personally contacting Simon and Kirby to give his support." Though preceded as a patriotically themed superhero by MLJ's The Shield, Captain America immediately became the most prominent and enduring of that wave of superheroes introduced in American comic books prior to and during World War II. As evidenced by the unusual move at the time of premiering the character in his own title instead of an anthology title first. This popularity drew the attention and a complaint from MLJ that the character's triangular shield too closely resembled the chest symbol of their Shield character. In response, Goodman had Simon and Kirby create a distinctive round shield for issue 2, which went on to become an iconic element of the character. With his sidekick Bucky, Captain America faced Nazis, Japanese, and other threats to wartime America and the Allies. Stanley Lieber, now better known as Stan Lee, contributed to the character in issue number 3 in the Filotex story Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge, which introduced the character's use of his shield as a returning throwing weapon. Captain America soon became Timely's most popular character and even had a fan club called the Sentinels of Liberty. Circulation figures remained close to 1 million copies per month after the debut issue, which outstripped even the circulation of news magazines such as Time during the period. After the Simon and Kirby team moved to DC Comics in late 1941, having produced Captain America comics through issue number 10, Al Avison and Sid Shores became regular pencilers of the celebrated title, with one generally inking over the other. The character was featured in All Winners Comics number 1-19, Marvel Mystery Comics number 80-84 and number 86-92, USA Comics number 6-17, and All Select Comics number 1-10. In the post-war era, with the popularity of superheroes fading, Captain America led Timely's first superhero team, the All Winners Squad, in its 2 published adventures, in All Winners Comics number 19 and number 21. After Bucky was shot and wounded in a 1948 Captain America story, he was succeeded by Captain America's girlfriend, Betsy Ross, who became the superheroine Golden Girl. Captain America Comics ran until issue number 73, at which time the series was retitled Captain America's Weird Tales for 2 issues, with the finale being a horror suspense anthology issue with no superheroes. Atlas Comics attempted to revive its superhero titles when it reintroduced Captain America, along with the original Human Torch and the Submariner, in Young Men number 24. Billed as Captain America, Commie Smasher. Captain America appeared during the next year in Young Men number 24-28 and Men's Adventures number 27-28, as well as in issues number 76-78 of an eponymous title. Atlas' attempted superhero revival was a commercial failure, and the character's title was cancelled with Captain America number 78. Silver Age Revival. In the Human Torch story titled Captain America in Marvel Comics Strange Tales number 114, writer-editor Stan Lee and artist and co-plotter Jack Kirby depicted the brash young Fantastic Four member Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, in an exhibition performance with Captain America, described as a legendary World War II and 1950s superhero who has returned after many years of apparent retirement. The 18-page story ends with this Captain America revealed as an imposter. It was actually the villain the Acrobat, a former circus performer the Torch had defeated in Strange Tales number 106, who broke 2 thieves out of jail, hoping to draw the police away while trying to rob the local bank. Afterward, Storm digs out an old comic book in which Captain America is shown to be Steve Rogers. A caption in the final panel says this story was a test to see if readers would like Captain America to return. Captain America was then formally reintroduced in the Avengers number 4, which explained that in the final days of World War II, he had fallen from an experimental drone plane into the North Atlantic Ocean and spent decades frozen in a block of ice in a state of suspended animation. The hero found a new generation of readers as leader of that superhero team. Following the success of other Marvel characters introduced during the 1960s, Captain America was recast as a hero haunted by past memories, and trying to adapt to 1960s society. After then guest starring in the feature Iron Man in Tales of Suspense number 58, Captain America gained his own solo feature in that split book, beginning the following issue. Issue number 63, which retold Captain America's origin, through issue number 71 was a period feature set during World War II and co-starred Captain America's Golden Age sidekick, Bucky. Kirby drew all but 2 of the stories in Tales of Suspense, which became Captain America with number 100. Gil Kane and John Romita, Sr., each filled in once. Several stories were finished by penciler-inker George Tusk over Kirby layouts, with one finished by Romita Essa and another by penciler Dick S. and inker John Tartaglian. Kirby's regular inkers on the series were Frank Giacoia and Joe Sinnott, though Don Heck and Golden Age Captain America artists Sid Shaw's inked one story each. The new title Captain America continued to feature artwork by Kirby, as well as a short run by Jim Steranko, and work by many of the industry's top artists and writers. It was called Captain America and the Falcon from number 134 to number 222, although the Falcon's name was not on the cover for issues number 193, 200, and 216. The 1972–1975 run on the title by writer Steve Englehart and artist Sal Buscema saw the series become one of Marvel's top sellers. In 2010, Comics Bulletin ranked Englehart and Buscema's run on Captain America fourth on its list of the top 10 1970s Marvels. Kirby returned to the series as writer and penciler with issue number 193 and remained through number 214. This era is considered Captain America Volume 1 by comics researchers and historians, following the 1940s Captain America comics and its 1950s numbering continuation of Tales of Suspense ended with number 454. After the Silver Age, this series was almost immediately followed by the 13-issue Captain America Volume 2, the 50-issue Captain America Volume 3, the 32-issue Captain America Volume 4, and Captain America Volume 5. Beginning with the 600th overall issue, Captain America resumed its original numbering, as if the series numbering had continued uninterrupted after number 454. As part of the aftermath of Marvel Comics Company crossover storyline Civil War, Steve Rogers was ostensibly killed in Captain America Volume 5, number 25. Series writer Ed Brubaker remarked, "What I found is that all the really hardcore left-wing fans want Cap to be standing out on and giving speeches on the street corner against the George W. Bush administration, and all the really right-wing fans all want him to be over in the streets of Baghdad, punching out Saddam Hussein." The character's co-creator, Joe Simon, said, "It's a hell of a time for him to go. We really need him now." Artist Alex Ross designed a slightly revised Captain America costume that former sidekick Bucky Barnes began to wear as the new Captain America in Volume 5, number 34. The storyline of Rogers' return began in issue number 600. Rogers, who was not dead but caroming through time, returned to the present day in the 6-issue miniseries Captain America, Reborn. After Rogers' return, Barnes, at Rogers' insistence, continued as Captain America, beginning in the one-shot comic Captain America, Who Will Wield the Shield. While Bucky Barnes continued adventuring in the pages of Captain America, Steve Rogers received his own miniseries as well as taking on the leadership position in a new Secret Avengers ongoing series. Spin-off series included Captain America Sentinel of Liberty and Captain America and the Falcon. The 1940s Captain America appeared alongside the 1940s Human Torch and Submariner in the 12-issue miniseries Avengers Invaders. The 2007 miniseries Captain America, The Chosen, written by David Morrell and penciled by Mitchell Breitweiser, depicts a dying Steve Rogers' final minutes, at SHIELD headquarters, as his spirit guides James Newman, a young American Marine fighting in Afghanistan. The Chosen is not part of the main Marvel Universe continuity. The character, first as Agent Steve Rogers and later after resuming his identity as Captain America, appeared as a regular character throughout the 2010–2013 Avengers series, from issue number 1 through its final issue number 34. The character appeared as Agent Steve Rogers as a regular character in the 2010–2013 Secret Avengers series, from issue number 1 through issue number 21. The character made guest appearances as Captain America in issues 21.1, number 22–23, number 35, and the final issue of the series number 37. Marvel stated in May 2011 that Rogers, following the public death of Bucky Barnes in the Fear Itself miniseries, would resume his Captain America identity in a 6th volume of Captain America, by writer Ed Brubaker and artist Steve McNiven. The Captain America title continued from issue number 620 featuring team-up stories with Bucky, Hawkeye, Iron Man, Namor, and Black Widow, and the title ended its print run with issue number 640. Captain America is a regular character in Uncanny Avengers, beginning with issue number 1 as part of Marvel Now. Captain America Volume 7 was launched in November 2012 with a January 2013 cover date by writer Rick Remender and artist John Romita Jr. Legal status: in 1966 Joe Simon sued the owners of Marvel Comics, asserting that he not Marvel A was legally entitled to renew the copyright upon the expiration of the original 28-year term. The two parties settled out of court, with Simon agreeing to a statement that the character had been created under terms of employment by the publisher, and therefore it was work for hire owned by them. In 1999, Simon filed to claim the copyright to Captain America under a provision of the Copyright Act of 1976 which allowed the original creators of works that had been sold to corporations to reclaim them after the original 56-year copyright term had expired. Marvel Entertainment challenged the claim, arguing that the settlement of Simon's 1966 suit made the character ineligible for termination of the copyright transfer. Simon and Marvel settled out of court in 2003, in a deal that paid Simon royalties for merchandising and licensing use of the character. Fictional character biography, 1940s. Stephen Rogers was born in the 1920s in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, New York City, to poor Irish immigrants, Sarah and Joseph Rogers. Joseph Rogers died when Steve was only a child and his mother, Sarah, died of pneumonia while Steve was a teen. By early 1940, before America's entry into World War II, Rogers is a tall but scrawny fine arts student specializing in illustration, and a comic book writer and artist. Disturbed by the rise of the Third Reich, Rogers attempts to enlist, only to be rejected due to his physically frail body. His resolution allows him to be noticed by U.S. Army General Chester Phillips and Project Rebirth. Rogers is used as a test subject for the Super Soldier Project, receiving a special serum made by Dr. Joseph Feinstein, later retroactively changed to a code name for the scientist Abraham Erskine. The name Erskine was first used in a Captain America novel The Great Gold Steal by Ted White published by Bantam Books in 1968. The serum is a success, and transforms the frail Steve Rogers into a perfect specimen, a nearly perfect human being with peak strength, agility, stamina, and intelligence. The success of the program leaves Erskine wondering about replicating the experiment on other human beings. The process itself has been inconsistently detailed. While in the original material Steve Rogers is shown receiving injections of the super serum, when the origin was retold in the 1960s, the Comic Code Authority had already put a veto over graphic description of drug intake and abuse, and thus the super serum was retconned into an oral formula. Later accounts hint at a combination of oral and intravenous treatments with a strenuous training regimen, culminating in the Vita-Ray exposure. Erskine refused to write down every crucial element of the treatment, leaving behind a flawed, imperfect knowledge of the needed steps. Thus, when the Nazi spy Heinz Kruger killed him, Erskine's method of creating new super soldiers died as well. Captain America, in his first act after his transformation, avenges Erskine. In the 1941 origin story and in Tales of Suspense number 63, Kruger dies when running into machinery but is not killed by Rogers. In the Captain America number 109 and number 255 revisions, Rogers causes the spy's death by punching him into machinery. Unable to create new super soldiers, and willing to hide the Project Rebirth fiasco, the American government casts the now powerful Rogers as a patriotic superhero, able to counter the menace of the Red Skull as a counterintelligence agent. As such, he's supplied with a patriotic uniform designed by Rogers himself, a bulletproof shield, a personal sidearm, and the codename Captain America, while posing as a clumsy infantry private at Camp Lehigh in Virginia. He forms a friendship with the camp's teenage mascot, James Buchanan Bucky Barnes. Eventually Barnes learns of Rogers' dual identity and offers to keep the secret if he can become Captain America's sidekick, being trained himself to act as the perfect partner. During their adventures, Franklin D. Roosevelt presents Captain America with a new shield, forged from an alloy of steel and vibranium, fused by an unknown catalyst, so effective that it replaces his own firearm. Throughout World War II, Captain America and Bucky fight the Nazi menace both on their own and as members of the superhero team The Invaders as seen in the 1970s comic of the same name. Captain America battles a number of criminal menaces on American soil, including a wide variety of costumed villains, the Wax Man, the Hangman, the Fang, the Black Talon, and the White Death, among others. In addition to sidekick Bucky, Captain America was occasionally assisted by the Sentinels of Liberty. Sentinels of Liberty was the title given to members of the Captain America comics fan club who Captain America would sometimes address as an aside, or as characters in the Captain America comics stories. In late April 1945, during the closing days of World War II, Captain America and Bucky tried to stop the villainous Baron Zemo from destroying an experimental drone plane. Zemo launches the plane with an armed explosive on it with Rogers and Barnes in hot pursuit. The pair reach the plane just before takeoff. When Bucky tries to defuse the bomb, it explodes in mid-air. The young man is believed killed. Rogers is held into the freezing waters of the North Atlantic. Neither is found, and both are presumed dead. It is later revealed that neither character actually died. Late 1940s to 1950s, Captain America continued to appear in comics for the next few years, changing from World War II-era hero fighting against the Nazis to confronting the United States' newest enemy, communism. The revival of the character in the mid-1950s was short-lived, and events during that time period are later retconned to show that multiple people operated using the code name to explain the changes in the character. These post-World War II successors are listed as William Naslund and Jeffrey Mace. The last of these other official captains, William Burnside, was a history graduate enamored with the Captain America mythos, going so far to have his appearance surgically altered to resemble Rogers and legally change his name to Steve Rogers, becoming the new 1950s Captain America. He self-administered to himself and his pupil James Jack Monroe a flawed, incomplete copy of the super serum, which made no mention about the necessary Vita-Ray portion of the treatment. As a result, while Burnside and Monroe became the new Captain America and Bucky, they became violently paranoid, often raving about innocent people being communist sympathizers during the height of the Red Scare of the 1950s. Their insanity forced the U.S. government to place both of them in indefinite cryogenic storage until they could be cured of their mental illness. Monroe would later be cured and assume the nomad identity. 1960s to 1970s. Years later, the superhero team The Avengers discovers Steve Rogers' body in the North Atlantic, the captain's uniform under his soldier's fatigues and still carrying his shield. After he revives, they piece together that Rogers had been preserved in a block of ice since 1945, surviving in such a state only because of his enhancements from Operation Rebirth. The block had begun to melt after the submariner, enraged that an Inuit tribe is worshipping the frozen figure, throws it into the ocean. Rogers accepts membership in the Avengers, and although long out of his time, his considerable experience both in individual combat service and his time with the Invaders makes him a valuable asset to the team. He quickly assumes leadership, and has typically returned to that position throughout the team's history. Captain America is plagued by guilt for having been unable to prevent Bucky's death. Although he takes the young Rick Jones under his tutelage, he refuses for some time to allow Jones to take up the Bucky identity, not wishing to be responsible for another youth's death. Insisting that his hero finally move on from that loss, Jones eventually convinces Rogers to let him don the Bucky costume, but this partnership lasts only a short time. A disguised Red Skull, impersonating Rogers with the help of the Cosmic Cube, drives Jones away. Rogers reunites with his old war comrade Nick Fury, who is similarly well preserved due to the Infinity Formula. As a result, Rogers regularly undertakes missions for the security agency SHIELD, for which Fury is public director. Through Fury, Rogers befriends Sharon Carter, an SHIELD agent, with whom he eventually begins a romantic relationship. Rogers later meets and trains Sam Wilson, who becomes the superhero the Falcon, the first African-American superhero in mainstream comic books. The characters established an enduring friendship and adventuring partnership, sharing the series title for some time as Captain America and the Falcon. The two later encounter the revived but still insane 1950s Captain America. Although Rogers and the Falcon defeat the foe Rogers and Jack Monroe, Rogers becomes deeply disturbed that he could have suffered his counterpart's fate. During this period, Rogers temporarily gains super strength. The series dealt with the Marvel Universe's version of the Watergate scandal, making Rogers so uncertain about his role that he abandons his Captain America identity in favor of one called Nomad, emphasizing the word's meaning as man without a country. During this time, several men unsuccessfully assume the Captain America identity. Rogers eventually reassumes it after coming to consider that the identity could be a symbol of American ideals and not its government. It's a personal conviction epitomized when he later confronted a corrupt army officer attempting to manipulate him by appealing to his loyalty. "I'm loyal to nothing, Generala. Except the American dream." Jack Monroe, cured of his mental instability, later takes up the Nomad alias. Sharon Carter is believed to have been killed while under the mind control of Dr. Faustus, 1980s to 1990s. The 1980s included a run by writer Roger Stern and artist John Byrne. Stern had Steve Rogers consider a run for President of the United States in Captain America No. 250, an idea originally developed by Roger McKenzie and Don Perlin. Stern, in his capacity as editor of the title, had originally rejected the idea but later changed his mind about the concept. Mackenzie and Perlin received credit for the idea on the letters page at Stern's insistence. Stern additionally introduced a new love interest, law student Bernie Rosenthal, in Captain America No. 248. Writer J. M. DeMatteis revealed the true face and full origin of the Red Skull in Captain America No. 298-300, and had Captain America take on Jack Monroe, Nomad, as a partner for a time. It is around this time that the heroes gathered by the Beyonder elect Rogers as leader during their stay on Battleworld in the 1984 miniseries Secret Wars. Homophobia was dealt with as Steve Rogers runs into a childhood friend named Arnold Rath who is gay. Mark Gruenwald became the writer of the series with issue number 307 and wrote 137 issues for 10 consecutive years from until number 443, the most issues by any single author in the character's history. Gruenwald created several new foes, including Crossbones and the Serpent Society. Other Gruenwald characters included Diamondback, Super Patriot, and Demolition Man. Gruenwald explored numerous political and social themes as well, such as extreme idealism when Captain America fights the anti-nationalist terrorist Flag Smasher, and vigilantism when he hunts the murderous scourge of the underworld. Rogers receives a large back pay reimbursement dating back to his disappearance at the end of World War II, and a government commission orders him to work directly for the U.S. government. Already troubled by the corruption he had encountered with the nuke incident in New York City, Rogers chooses instead to resign his identity, and then takes the alias of the Captain. A replacement Captain America, John Walker, struggles to emulate Rogers' ideals until pressure from hidden enemies helps to drive Walker insane. Rogers returns to the Captain America identity while a recovered Walker becomes the U.S. agent. Sometime afterward, Rogers avoids the explosion of a methamphetamine lab, but the drug triggers a chemical reaction in the super soldier serum in his system. To combat the reaction, Rogers has the serum removed from his body, and trains constantly to maintain his physical condition. A retcon later establishes that the serum was not a drug per se, which would have metabolized out of his system, but in fact a virus-like organism that effected a biochemical and genetic change. This additionally explained how Nemesis the Red Skull, who at the time inhabited a body cloned from Rogers' cells, has the formula in his body. Because of his altered biochemistry, Rogers' body begins to deteriorate, and for a time he must wear a powered exoskeleton and is eventually placed again in suspended animation. During this time, he is given a transfusion of blood from the Red Skull, which cures his condition and stabilizes the super soldier virus in his system. Captain America returns both to crime fighting and the Avengers. Following Gruenwald's departure from the series, Mark Waid took over and resurrected Sharon Carter as Cap's love interest. The title was then relaunched under Rob Liefeld as Cap became part of the Heroes Reborn universe for 13 issues before another relaunch restored Wade to the title in an arc that saw Cap lose his shield for a time using an energy-based shield as a temporary replacement. Following Wade's run, Dan Jurgens took over and introduced new foe Protocide, a failed recipient of the super soldier serum prior to the experiment that successfully created Rogers. 2000s, in the aftermath of the September 11 terrorist attacks, Rogers reveals his identity to the world and establishes a residence in the Red Hook neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York, as seen in Captain America Volume 4, Number 1-7. Following the disbandment of the Avengers and the Avengers Disassembled story arc, Rogers, now employed by SHIELD, discovers Bucky is alive, having been saved and deployed by the Soviets as the Winter Soldier. Rogers resumes his on-again, off-again relationship with SHIELD agent Sharon Carter. In the 2006-2007 company-wide story arc Civil War, and its anchoring, 7-issue miniseries, Civil War, Rogers opposes the new mandatory federal registration of superpowered beings, and leads the underground anti-registration movement. After significant rancor and danger to the public as the two sides clash, Captain America voluntarily surrenders and orders the anti-registration forces to stand down. In the story arc The Death of Captain America, Rogers is indicted on criminal charges for his anti-registration efforts, and in Captain America Volume 5, Number 25 is shot outside a federal courthouse. Taken to a hospital, he is pronounced dead. The assassination, orchestrated by the Red Skull, involves Crossbones as a sniper and Dr. Faustus, who poses as an SHIELD psychiatrist and gives Carter a hypnotic suggestion to surreptitiously shoot Rogers at close range during the chaos surrounding the sniper shot. The miniseries Fallen Sun, The Death of Captain America Number 1-5 follows the stunned superhero community after the apparent assassination. Captain America is purportedly laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery, but Tony Stark and others have actually returned Rogers' body to the Arctic where Rogers had been found years before, and whereupon Namor swore to guard him. In Captain America Volume 5, Number 30, Stark, who previously had tried to convince close friend and colleague of both Rogers and Stark, Clint Barton to take up the role, receives a letter containing Rogers' request that Bucky become the next Captain America, which Bucky agrees to do 4 issues later. Adopting the original shield, he dons a new costume incorporating a pistol and a knife. The Norse god superhero Thor communicates with what appears to be Rogers' spirit on the first anniversary of Rogers' death, in Thor Volume 3, Number 11. Captain America, Reborn Number 1 reveals that Rogers did not die, and that the gun Sharon Carter had been hypnotized to use had actually caused Rogers to phase in and out of space and time, appearing at events in his lifetime and fighting battles. The Skull returns Rogers to the present, where he takes control of Rogers' mind and body. Rogers eventually regains control, and with help from his allies, defeats the Skull in the 4th and final issues of this miniseries. In the subsequent one-shot comic Captain America, Who Will Wield the Shield?, Rogers formally grants Bucky his Captain America shield and asks his former sidekick to continue as Captain America. The American president grants Rogers a full pardon for his anti-registration actions. 2010s, following the company-wide Dark Reign and Siege story arcs, the Steve Rogers character became part of the Heroic Age arc. The U.S. president appoints Rogers, in his civilian identity, as America's top cop, and head of the nation's security, replacing Norman Osborn as the 10th executive director of SHIELD. The Superhuman Registration Act is repealed and Rogers re-establishes the superhero team the Avengers, spearheaded by Iron Man, Thor, and Bucky as Captain America. In the miniseries Steve Rogers, Super Soldier, he encounters Jacob Erskine, the grandson of Professor Abraham Erskine and the son of Tyler Paxton, one of Rogers' fellow volunteers in the Super Soldier program. Shortly afterward, Rogers becomes leader of the Secret Avengers, a Black Ops superhero team. During the Fear Itself storyline, Steve Rogers is present when the threat of the Serpent is known. Following the apparent death of Bucky at the hands of Sin, Steve Rogers ends up changing into his Captain America uniform. When the Avengers and the New Avengers are fighting Skadi, the Serpent ends up joining the battle and breaks Captain America's shield with his bare hands. Captain America and the Avengers teams end up forming a militia for a last stand against the forces of the Serpent. When it comes to the final battle, Captain America uses Thor's hammer to fight Skadi until Thor manages to kill the Serpent. In the aftermath of the battle, Iron Man presents him with his reforged shield, now stronger for its Euro-infused enhancements despite the scar it bears. It is then revealed that Captain America, Nick Fury, and Black Widow are the only ones who know that Bucky actually survived the fight with Skadi as Bucky resumes his identity as Winter Soldier. In the Avengers vs. X-Men story arc, Captain America attempts to apprehend Hope Summers of the X-Men. She is the targeted vessel for the Phoenix Force, a destructive cosmic entity. Captain America believes that this Phoenix Force is too dangerous to entrust in one person and seeks to prevent Hope from having it. Cyclops and the X-Men believe that the Phoenix Force will save their race, and oppose Captain America's wishes. The result is a series of battles that eventually take both teams to the blue area of the moon. The Phoenix Force eventually possesses the 5 X-Men present, leaving the Avengers at an extreme disadvantage. A Phoenix 5, who become corrupted by the power of the Phoenix, are eventually defeated and scattered, with Cyclops imprisoned for turning the world into a police state and murdering Charles Xavier after being pushed too far, only for him to note that, in the end, he was proven right about the Phoenix's intentions. From there, Captain America proceeds to assemble the Avengers Unity Squad, a new team of Avengers composed of both classic Avengers and X-Men. Powers and abilities. Captain America has no superhuman powers, but through the super soldier serum and Vita Ray treatment, he is transformed and his strength, endurance, agility, speed, reflexes, durability, and healing are at the zenith of natural human potential. Rogers' body regularly replenishes the super soldier serum. It does not wear off. The formula enhances all of his metabolic functions and prevents the buildup of fatigue poisons in his muscles, giving him endurance far in excess of an ordinary human being. This accounts for many of his extraordinary feats, including bench pressing 1,200 pounds and running a mile in 73 seconds. Furthermore, his enhancements are the reason why he was able to survive being frozen in suspended animation for decades. He is highly resistant to hypnosis or gases that could limit his focus. The secrets of creating a super soldier were lost with the death of its creator, Dr. Abraham Erskine. In the ensuing decades there have been numerous attempts to recreate Erskine's treatment, only to have them end in failure. Even worse, the attempts have instead often created psychopathic supervillains, of which Captain America's 1950s imitator and Nuke are the most notorious examples. Rogers' battle experience and training make him an expert tactician and an excellent field commander, with his teammates frequently deferring to his orders in battle. Thor has stated that Rogers is one of the very few humans he will take orders from and follow through the gates of Hades. Rogers' reflexes and senses are extraordinarily keen. He has blended judo, Western boxing, kickboxing, and gymnastics into his own unique fighting style and is a master of multiple martial arts. Years of practice with his near-indestructible shield make him able to aim and throw it with almost unerring accuracy. His skill with his shield is such that he can attack multiple targets in succession with a single throw or even cause a boomerang-like return from a throw to attack an enemy from behind. In canon, he is regarded by other skilled fighters as one of the best hand-to-hand combatants in the Marvel Universe, limited only by his human physique. Although the super soldier serum is an important part of his strength, Rogers has shown himself still sufficiently capable against stronger opponents, even when the serum has been deactivated, reverting him to his pre-Captain America physique. Rogers has vast U.S. military knowledge and is often shown to be familiar with ongoing, classified Defense Department operations. He is an expert in combat strategy, survival, acrobatics, military strategy, piloting, and demolitions. Despite his high profile as one of the world's most popular and recognizable superheroes, Rogers has a broad understanding of the espionage community, largely through his ongoing relationship with SHIELD. He is a talented artist, and has worked on the Captain America comic book published in the Marvel Universe. Other career fields include commercial arts, teaching high school history, and law enforcement. Although he lacks superhuman strength, Captain America is one of the few mortal beings who has been deemed worthy enough to wield Thor's hammer Mjolnir. Weapons and equipment. Captain America has used multiple shields throughout his history, the most prevalent of which is a nigh-indestructible disc-shaped shield made from an experimental alloy of steel and the fictional vibranium. The shield was cast by American metallurgist Dr. Myron McLean, who was contracted by the U.S. government, from orders of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to create an impenetrable substance to use for tanks during World War II. This alloy was created by accident and never duplicated, although efforts to reverse engineer it resulted in the discovery of adamantium. Captain America often uses his shield as an offensive throwing weapon. The first instance of Captain America's trademark ricocheting shield toss occurs in Stan Lee's first comics writing, the two-page text story Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge in Captain America Comics No. 3. The legacy of the shield among other comics characters includes the time-traveling mutant superhero Cable telling Captain America that his shield still exists in one of the possible futures. Cable carries it into battle and brandishes it as a symbol. When without his trademark shield, Captain America sometimes uses other shields made from less durable metals such as steel, or even a photonic energy shield designed to mimic a vibranium matrix. Rogers, having relinquished his regular shield to Barnes, carried a variant of the energy shield which can be used with either arm, and used to either block attacks or as an improvised offensive weapon able to cut through metal with relative ease. Much like his vibranium shield, the energy shield can be thrown, including ricocheting off multiple surfaces and returning to his hand. Captain America's uniform is made of a fire-retardant material, and he wears a lightweight, bulletproof duralumin scale armor beneath his uniform for added protection. Originally, Rogers' mask was a separate piece of material, but an early engagement had it dislodged, thus almost exposing his identity. To prevent a recurrence of the situation, Rogers modified the mask with connecting material to his uniform, an added benefit of which was extending his armor to cover his previously exposed neck. As a member of the Avengers, Rogers has an Avengers Priority Card, which serves as a communications device. Captain America has used a custom specialized motorcycle, modified by the SHIELD Weapons Laboratory, as well as a custom-built battle van, constructed by the Wakanda Design Group with the ability to change its color for disguise purposes, and fitted to store and conceal the custom motorcycle in its rear section with a frame that allows Rogers to launch from the vehicle riding it. Enemies. Captain America has faced numerous foes in over 70 years of published adventures. Many of his recurring foes embody ideals contrary to the American values Captain America is shown to strive for and believe. Some examples of these opposing values are Nazism, neo-Nazism, technocratic fascism, communism, anarchism, and international and domestic terrorism. Other versions. In other media. References. External links. Gladstone, Brooke. Death to America. On the Media. Transcript and streaming audio. Ed Brubaker and Joe Simon interviewed. Archived from the original on May 10, 2009. Retrieved July 27, 2007. Powell, Matt. Captain America Remembered. Wizard. Archived from the original on March 9, 2007. Retrieved July 27, 2007. Captain America Library. Archived from the original on July 8, 2011. Captain America at the Marvel Universe Wiki, Captain America at the Comic Book DB, Captain America Cover Gallery, Markstein, Don. Captain America. Don Markstein's Toonipedia. Archived from the original on April 9, 2012. Retrieved April 9, 2012 A.